Thank you for taking the time to tune in with us. Here on Unclamped, we recognize that every patient and caregiver carries a story, each one shaped by unique experiences, challenges, and triumphs. Before we dive in, we want to take a few minutes to introduce ourselves so you can get to know the voices behind the mic, the journeys that brought us together here, and the passion that fuels this space. Because this isn't just a podcast, it really is about community, and every story matters.
I'm your host, Crystal, along with Gabby and Jamie. Today, our topic we will be addressing ignorance, frustration, and sometimes some painful comments and questions that we receive from the public and also from medical professionals who are less than educated. So, ladies, um, Jamie, could you share some of the comments that have been that's been said to you that are hurtful or make you frustrated?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love this topic. So it just reminds me of my son. He's 15 and he calls this rage baiting, which I hope I'm using the term right, but I'm a little old. But yeah, no, for sure. I think the one that sticks out the most, and to this day just makes me just so frustrated is when we would go in, not so much with my son, but with my daughter earlier on. She was born in 2007. Um, we would go in for a line infection rule out, and in the ER, we would be met with, "Oh, well, if your daughter didn't have a central line, you wouldn't need to be here right now." And again, like her pathway and her diagnosis aren't really necessarily like a linear path to TPN. And that just always felt so infuriating to me. Like,
Mm.
why are you saying that to me? Like the fact is she has a line, she has a fever over 100.4. Why is that relevant? Because that just gets my blood boiling to this day. What about you guys?
Yeah, I could definitely see that, how their ignorance has they're basically calling you out. Gabby, what are some of the things that you hear?
So like something that like drives me nuts is like if they see my son like connected to his machines or something, or if I just tell them, oh, he has a central line, and they say, oh, he has cancer, or they'll say like, oh, at least he doesn't have cancer. And that just
Mhm.
like gets me mad for so many other reasons. But yeah, I've
I
learned along the way how to like navigate those
Right.
comments, but it's tough at first because kind of like just gets you by surprise, and like I used to just freeze, or sometimes I would just be mean. But yeah, I've learned along the way.
And there are a lot of people that are on parental nutrition or nutrition support and have cancer, and that's one way for them to live. As a person who has a port, I get that very frequently,
Mm,
versus because people mainly associate ports with chemo treatments
mhm.
versus parental nutrition. So I get the you have a port. Are you in remission? And I'm like, no. Sometimes I'll make a joke of it and say, "Yeah, my GI is in remission. It's not working. It's decided to take the week off, or the month off or whatever," and make a joke of it because I don't know how else to respond without hurting their feelings. But there's a fine line between me hurting their feelings and them hurting my feelings. And I most of the time I just laugh it off. But there are certainly some things that are not laughable to me. But Gabby, do they have any, since your son was very young, and went through the toddler phase, and same with Jamie's daughter, went through the toddler phase on TPN, what do they say when they had his backpack on?
Oh, we've got everything like, oh, it's like 10 o'clock at night, or they see him, or like they're like, oh, heading to school, or they'll say like, oh, it like he has the curly tubing on his TPN, and so they're like, "Oh, is that a leash? I need one of those for my kids," or "I need one of those for my
Like
grandkids."
like,
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
I'm leashed now, right? As we're unclambed, I'm totally leashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that those comments are like I mean, didn't they teach you to like, if you don't have anything nice to say, not to say it?
That would be
Yeah.
nice if people were to try to stay in line or ask the question with an
Yeah.
honest, like, curiosity as to, "Oh, I see your son has a backpack, with a line. Is there anything I could do? Is could you explain more?" Instead of or from a pure heart instead of, like, from, trying to figure out and understand
Yeah.
the craziness and assume something's wrong.
Or they
Yeah,
could,
no,
like,
I can
whisper, like sorry. They could, like,
no,
whisper,
go.
like, "Hey, what's that?"
Yeah,
Like, simple, "What's that?" But, like, I know genuinely, they just wanna know.
yeah. Jamie?
Yeah, no, for sure. I was just gonna say, one of the things that gets me, even to this day, people will say it if we're either at a party or even at a family gathering. It's, "Oh, look, they can eat. She can eat," and I'm like, "Yeah, no one said she couldn't." I mean, there's some people that are on TPN that can't eat, and they're restricted completely. But in our case, our children eat my children eat for pleasure, not necessarily for nutrition. So in those social settings, or when they're, out doing everyday activities, they're fortunate enough where they can participate to a degree, again, for that social aspect. But then immediately it's like, they're eating. Like, wow. And it's just it's when you take those deep breaths and you're like, "Okay." Like, again, they mean no harm, but this is an education opportunity, and that's what I've tried to always, like, reframe with is, this is a learning opportunity, and just a way for me to realize that, people are curious and they need to be steered the right way.
Yeah, that's a very good one. I get that frequently as I infuse during the day. So I'm actively infusing and I'll be taking a bite or two of something, which my doctors encourage, by the way, us
Mhm.
eating because we need our GIs to stay as stimulated as possible because it does more than just give us nutrition. Um, they're great for so many other things like our immune system and everything, our hormones. So it's so encouraged if we can eat orally, to eat small amounts, but yet then we hear from from the public, asking us questions as to why we are eating when or why can't we eat enough? You're able to take 3 bites. Well, can't you eat enough? And I'm like, "No, I can't. That's all 3 bites is it." I'm
Right.
okay with that. I can eat enough to sustain a one-month-old, but not enough to sustain somebody my age and size. Um, with with you ladies both having kids, how hard is it with your kids in the school? Do you hear anything specifically around, uh, the school, being in school? What's some of the stuff that goes on in the schools?
Sorry, I'm smiling because, where I almost had to, like, have a throwdown with the elementary school when Olivia was younger because, they had, like, the lunch support helpers there that would, walk around, help people with their juice boxes, just, and there was this one person in particular that was just very, focused on my child's lunchbox and the fact that they weren't eating or, oftentimes she like, if I gave her, like, a sandwich, she would just pick it apart, and almost, like, play with it as, like, a sensory experience, maybe take a couple of bites, but it was messy, and it wasn't necessarily the way you would normally watch a typical 8-year-old or 9-year-old child eat, um, and it got to the point where it started making her feel insecure, which was really frustrating because she walked in like, "Okay, this is what I do," and, very confident, and then it took someone kind of making her feel like the outlier and, like, isolated with what she was doing and how she was doing things, to the point where I had to say something, and I was fortunate enough where, my child was able to communicate that and tell me that that was happening, And again, it was that re-education, that reframing that, I appreciate what you're doing. I know it's well intentioned and um thank you for trying to help my child eat, but in this case it's really not necessary. But yeah, it was like, "Oh, no, just leave her alone." you know?
Yeah. Gabby, what have your experiences been with school?
I mean, similar, similar. We try to make sure, like, from the beginning that medical stuff is medical stuff, school is school, and, like, try to keep that separate so we don't run into these kinda things, but yeah, similar as Jamie.
And do either of your children infuse during the day when they're in school, or is it normally always at home?
So home.
Home in the
Home,
evening.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my son does everything at home. He's very private about, his infusions, and keeping that kind of part separate, from his everyday life. And then, my daughter, since she grew up, on it and having such high hydration load requirements, she oftentimes does get boluses, during the day. And again, we really pushed the enteral journey. So she, even from a young age, like toddlerhood, she always was wearing a backpack anyway. So for her, it doesn't matter. But yeah, like the backpack questions, like if you go into a store or something and they're like, "You can't have your backpack on." And it's like, "No, no, like I need this. This isn't like, just for holding things. This is holding my medicine." So those comments come up and I know now. I know they rage bait her too, for sure.
Yes, those can definitely I get all kinds of questions around carrying my backpack around during the day, and you brought up a very good topic of, mentioning your daughter was on enteral nutrition, and now she's on, parental nutrition. If I'm not mistaken, Gabby, your son is on dual therapy. Can you speak to any questions that go around both? Like, is there any rage baiting questions or ignorant questions, frustrating questions that come out of him being on dual therapy?
Yeah, I think, like, people assume because he gets, like, G-tube feeds or eats that, like, okay, so he's coming off TPN tomorrow, or, like, why is he on TPN then? And it's like, I get it. They, like, just are curious, but sometimes it's like, we've been through this. Um, yeah, I think that's a lot of the questions that we get. I think also, like, they'll say they assume that because he's on TPN that it's, like, really, really bad, so then they're like, "Oh, so, like, it's so good he's on G-tube feeds, you get to get rid of, TPN soon." And we don't know that. Like, we don't know if we're gonna get off TPN soon just because he has some G-tube feeds. So it's kind of like they kinda remind me, like, that TPN is hard and, like, they're assuming that we're gonna get off when that's not the case.
Yeah, the dual therapy and being supplemental is an interesting way of doing it. I have Jamie, I'm gonna ask you this one, because emergency rooms, you were talking about that a little bit earlier. So, what do they say to you versus what would you like them to say when you arrive in the emergency room? And then I'll share some of my emergency room frustrations.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most important thing is that I'm looking for is empathy. Not sympathy, but empathy. So when someone says a comment like that, like, well, if your child didn't have a line, to me, it just doesn't feel very empathetic or very understanding of what we're going through or even trying to relate. Um, you know, what I've actually worked a lot with our hospital system on receiving children in the ER because of the experiences that I've had. In the ER, they don't necessarily deal with central lines all the time. So I think that that was like a learning opportunity for myself to kind of just put in perspective that this is my everyday, but you know, these people are seeing a spectrum of conditions and issues and they're triaging the best that they can. So I really try to partner with them right away, like, and let them know that, like, I do this every day. Like, I feel like if we can just work together and go through like what's going to happen in the processes and why we're here. I feel like the dumb questions or like the kind of like filler, uncomfortable statements that people make tends to be less. I just kind of really establish that partnership right away. Like, I'm here because I need you to do this, but you need to also lean on me because I do this every day. So let's just figure out how this is going to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about you?
For me, so having a port, which for a lot of people in the parental nutrition world, they don't see it as a means, right? They think of the other tunnel catheters or a PIC line, right? So some of the first things, and I'll go into the emergency room knowing that I'm going to have to get other therapies that's not PN, and they're like, "Well, we have to put an IV in you." Well, knowing the therapies that I'm going to get, I'm going to blow that peripheral line in less than 5 minutes normally, so my veins are okay for getting stuck to draw blood, stuff like that. But then or they'll try to put it in my AC and it'll blow, really quickly. It'll blow I'll get like 10, cc's of the normal saline in it, and then, yeah, I'm like, "Guys, you just blew my vein for no reason. That's the reason I ask you to use my port." And because of the hospital's policies and the constant thinking that the only thing that can go through your line is parenteral nutrition, we're not talking about receiving 2 therapies at the same time. We're talking about I'm off my PN, completed it for the day, or we've paused it because there's other things that's more important that needs to go into me, and doing a therapy that I need. Let's say I need Ativan because my body is completely contracted and my muscles are like they won't use my central line for that to push it because they're so worried about it, and yet then they blow so many other veins. So then I have some vascular issues, and so those are some of the things that need like drive me crazy, frustrate me, is the singular focus of what lines are used for, and my line is used for keeping me alive alive, so, oh, families can be difficult. So,
Yeah.
has any member of your family or extended friends, said anything to you that can be a rager? For me, it's my aunt. Ugh, I love her to death. However, um, she pushes me to eat. She knows I can eat, um, but she's like, "Is that all you're gonna eat?" And I'm like, "Well, that's all I can tolerate right this minute. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to eat. I'm not gonna order anything else." Or I'll be going out with some of my family members, and they decide to go to, like, an all you can eat, and I could eat potentially that day, and at that moment, but I'm going to choose not to eat because for me, it's not worth they chose to go to an some place that it's 50 to $100 per person because it's a fancy Brazilian steakhouse or something like that. And yeah, I could have 1 or 2 bites of the food, but I'm not going to spend that type of money on something I'm gonna have 3 bites on. And so I'm perfectly okay in this situation. It doesn't bother me to sit there while other people are eating and not eat anything and just have my glass of water. But they're just the waiters and the family members, like, pressuring me to eat, and sometimes I
Mhm.
do succumb to the pressure, and then they wonder why I'm sneezing and then getting sick for the next several hours.
Mhm.
What about
Yeah.
you, Jamie?
Sorry, I was just gonna say, like, when it comes to family and like pushing food, like there was a period in time where I wanted to have a T-shirt made that said "Don't feed the animals." Like, just like just stop trying to feed them. You're only gonna make it worse. But all jokes aside, I mean, social stuff has been hard. for my family. I come from a very big social family. And I remember when we first came home and had the central line and like the new protocol of like that fever threshold and going in and what that meant, for us as a family, that's 48 hours of being a sitting duck, and hoping that there's no infection. Um, my family didn't really get that. Like, they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" Like, "I just have a little cold." Or, like, "It's not contagious. It's allergies." Like, or, me
Mm.
asking those questions or like, "Oh, I know that, my nephew has a stomach bug, so I get that you think he's over it. I'm gonna sit this one out," but then so I played that game a little bit, like, trying to educate, but no one was really getting it, and then I kinda had, like, the opposite extreme. Like, then I started, like, being excluded from things, and then I'd
Mhm.
find out about it after the fact, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, we didn't wanna ask you because we assumed that," and so it took, like, a long time, like, many years, and I think COVID helped kind of everybody have that aha moment, like what when you don't wanna catch something, and that it could have consequences. So I'm thankful for that silver lining, but it took a lot of like, "No, I wanna be included, please don't exclude us or make those decisions for us, but also can you just be mindful because, a fever for my family is different than a fever for yours."
That
Mhm.
That was hard to, like, establish, but I feel like I'm finally there. I'm 14 years in, but I'm finally there.
Oh, yeah.
that's a great points. And what about so Gabby and Jamie, what about schools, right? So we know the first few weeks of school, pretty much everyone gets sick. That's common, standard, you know, practice.
I
August, September, whenever your kid starts back school, it seems like everyone comes home with a cold. So how do you handle your kids going to school knowing that there's could be other sick kids in the area?
I think that people knew it was common, but I didn't know it was common. Like, I cut like, we didn't start going to school until he was a little older, so we thought, like, we would stay away from every and all germs, and so it wasn't till we already got the rhythm of rule outs, we got the rhythm of what to do when he's sick, we, like, learned his body, that then we were like, "We'll take those risks," and if he got sick, and we knew what to do, but I think, like Jamie was talking about, like, early on, it's hard, like, people don't realize we're just trying to, like, figure it out and, like, how we're gonna survive this cold, and being in the hospital sucks for a cold, but we have to do it when we have a
Mhm.
fever, so it's like, they didn't realize that we're not there yet. We don't know how to handle a regular cold because it's for us, we have to go to the hospital. I think for school, we have, like, accommodations that help, wiping stuff down and, like, my son started school, like, during COVID, so he would wear a mask and, like, change it out, like, or move away from the kid who was coughing a lot. Like, little things like that have helped us with that.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting thing because I've never in the almost decade, so shorter time about the same time as Gabby, shorter time than Jamie. Um, I don't follow and I was never told that I needed to go to the hospital if I have 100, point 4 degrees, fever, which I'm thankful for, and I wouldn't because if I know I have a cold, I'm not going to the hospital for a rule out. Um, but at the same time, I know a lot of people do, if I know I have the flu, or if I know I have strep throat. The couple times that I have had a infection, I directly know it's an infection because my fever gets worse as I'm infusing. I stop infusing and my fever comes down nicely. So luckily, I've never been in those situations. Um, and I'm also I don't know if I should say this. I'm also really good at not always towing the line as to what the standard protocols are because 'cause I've known my body so long and so well, and I was an adult when I went on PN, versus the kids that are exposed to a decent amount.
I think that's rage bait, though. There's no standard protocol. Like,
That's
I have
it.
friends
Mhm.
with
Right.
kids who, like, their protocol is different.
Well,
Yes.
but I do wanna say, like, especially, with my daughter in particular, she underreports her symptoms, which made it really tricky
Mhm.
for us, especially in the beginning because, she's one of those kids that's fine until she decompensates and you're just like, "Wait, what? Like, what just happened?" Like, you were totally right as rain, like, 5 minutes ago. Um, so, I mean, I feel like when you're first starting and you're learning and you're getting to know, like, what you are like, what you can do and can't do, your threshold, like, changes, and working with your team also is so important. So, at first, we had the 100.4 protocol, that was it, like, you go in, and we were there frequently, and, luckily for us, we don't have a long history of line infections. She has a really good track record, but we were there because she also has a mitochondrial disease, she has temperature fluctuations, she has dysautonomia, and when she goes into a mito crash, so to speak, she storms. She gets high fevers, which is another piece to that puzzle, which really complicates things. But, you know, over time, your providers also see those trends, and like bringing it up and like talking through it. Like we now have like a modified protocol. So we have like tricks that we can do at home if we have a source for the fever that's not, really indicative of a line infection that we can do at home before going in, which has been a huge lifesaver.
Hmm.
But in the beginning, I think like it's important, you know, to always be safe rather than sorry. I mean, I've seen sepsis once and I never want to see it again. It's not something I can never, like, forget.
That
So
that is a rage of my own, using the proper terminology. Because when I said sepsis earlier, I used it because that's what people call it when I actually had bacteremia, not actual sepsis. But that's a great way of that's one of my strategies is correcting people's vernacular, vocabulary. What are some of your guys' strategies to deal with the different rages and how to educate and not get as angry and be able to just take a breath and be okay?
I don't always try to educate anymore. I, like, pick and choose when I want to educate and when I just need to walk away, when I just kinda make a little comment and that's it. Um, I think I've learned that I'm in control and, like, I don't have to react. And before I always reacted, I always either was, like, said something that would make them feel bad or, like, educated, and now it's like, I'm in control. I'll give you my energy if I want to.
That's good. Jamie, do you have
yeah.
any strategies with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of similar. I don't always see it as an education opportunity, but, I think it matters on, like, who the person is, like, how invested I am, in that relationship. And by nature, like, I am pretty closed off, so it takes a while. So you might just get iced. I mean, that yeah, I'm
Oh,
guilty,
I
I am
like
aware,
that.
but but, um but I feel like if I can get past the rage bait, and then, yeah, I do wanna share, and I do wanna make it a better experience for myself and for that person. Because I always try to go into it knowing that, like, this is not ill-intended. This is like, no one's out to get me. Like, these are just everyone's socially awkward. I really believe that. So, we just gotta meet people where they're at, right?
Well, and there's like you said, there is a difference between people that we are casually seeing, but then the people that you see every day,
Mhm.
your family or your close friends, teachers, people that are in our
Yeah.
circles that we have to deal with, regularly. How do you teach them? How do you talk to them about any of the things that frustrate you, so that we don't have to have that frustration conversation all the time? For me, it's I try to really explain that my GI system doesn't work, and it's from the beginning to the end. there's days I can't even talk because for me, it's a full muscular disorder, from my skeletal muscles being able to pick up my arms to the smooth muscles of my intestines. Luckily, I don't have any cardiac issues, but all my other muscles systems are impacted. And so I use that to explain it to them because they can understand when I can't pick up my arms or I can't walk or do those things, or I can't physically chew because my mouth is so fatigued. And so I'm like, well, my GI just needs a break just like my arms do. And so they start to understand that because I think as I think most of us understand our gross body movements and things we can see better than our enclosed GI system that is very hard for people to see. So I try to use things that people understand and talk to them that way versus trying to explain a system that is deep inside of us, but technically outside of us. So what about you, Jamie, Gabby? Do you?
I was just gonna say, that as a caregiver to 2 teenagers, um, I I am guilty of also giving the rage bait and not just receiving it, which is interesting. It's changed my perspective. I mean, because, I'm doing the best I can, and I've been navigating this life for 14 years, and I'm there's a lot of days where I'm frustrated. It's the roll of the dice. And my son, I actually got the term from my son, rage baiting, because I'll be like, "What did you eat today?" And he's like, "You're rage baiting me, mom. Like, cut it out." And I'm like, "Well, I need to know." And he's like, "It's a trigger for me." He's like, "Just don't ask me what I ate. Like, I don't wanna do this with you." Um,
Mhm.
and that at first I was like, "Well, I'm your mother. Like, you have to tell me." And then I was like, "No, wait. Like, he's right. Like, he's fine. Like, he's not having any symptoms. Like, why am I asking what he ate today? Like, he's getting what he needs. Like, I just need to stop." So I've tried to become very mindful of that. Or like when my daughter calls me because she's in college now, and she expended too much energy, so she's feeling kind of crappy, and I'm like, well, you should have listened to your body. You should have not like. And she's like, seriously, like no. So I mean, I have to admit that I'm guilty of rage baiting my children, and I'm trying to get better at it. And it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of
Mhm.
wanting to help them manage, but it's a process. And we laugh because they'll use trendy terms like rage baiting, and we'll laugh. But there's something that I'm trying to be more mindful of too. Is that as a caregiver, I can definitely rage bait my kids.
Gabby, do you have anything you wanna?
Yeah, I think what Jamie said, like, it comes from a place of love is how I've learned how to navigate my family. Like, I know when we would go on vacations, my sister, has a schedule and, like, she wants to make sure I'm there because it's out of love. But I need to disconnect and I want everyone to continue on with the fun, and I'll meet you when I'm ready. And they would wait for me, and then that would drive me crazy because I'm like, don't wait for me. Like, I don't want others impacted by what we have to do. And so I think like learning first that it's out of love, and then also then just telling her, like, I want you guys to go. Like, that's how you'll help me. Just keep on going and I'll meet you there when I can. Like, that makes me feel better. So yeah, just kind of realizing that most of the times, like, your family is doing these things and they're rage baiting you, but it's out of love. So, like, learning how to, navigate that.
Yeah, perfectly said. For me, I know most of the time it's out of love, but I'm like, just let me live my best life. I'm cool. You live your best life. I'll live my best life, and let's just live it together and figure out a way to do that, and then we'll be we'll be good. So thank you, ladies. It was a great topic.
We want to thank you for tuning in with us on Unclamped. We hope today's conversation reminded you that every diagnosis holds a story, one of strength, compassion, and connection. We want to give a heartfelt thank you to our sponsor, Avivo RX, for their commitment to supporting patients and families through their nutrition support journey. Their dedication makes conversations like this possible and provides a platform for the patient voice. We'd also love to hear from you too. If you have a story to share or a topic you'd like us to explore, reach out anytime at nutritiongroup4all@gmail.com. And be sure to find us on YouTube, follow along on our social media, and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.